One of the huge themes that came out of those conversations were all the founders were problem solvers, and they wanted to help and serve people. Cheap digital ads just don't exist anymore. They know that if they're going to get any serious traction, they have to appeal to a lot of customers, and they have to draw customers to them. If you can get things right in using your DTC channel, then you can apply it to retail. You've got a much better chance of success.
So on today's episode, you're going to hear the stories, the strategies, and the brands that wrote the D2C rules. Great episode, you do not want to miss, so do stay tuned. Hi 2Xers, welcome to the 2X e-commerce podcast show. I'm your host, Kunle Campbell, and this is the podcast dedicated to digital commerce insights for retail and e-commerce teams. Each week on this podcast, I interview, a commerce expert, a founder of a digital native consumer brand, or representative from a best-in-class, commerce SaaS product, and we give them a tight remit to help you grow, growth metrics such as conversions, average order value, repeat customers, your audience size, and ultimately your sales or gross merchant value. So in today's episode, it's a really, really interesting and special one because I had actually pre-ordered this book. It's called the Direct-To-Consumer Playbook. It's written by Mike Stevens. So Mike Stevens, the author of this book, is a guest on today's episode. And in his book, which I found quite inspiring, was interviews with about 16 founders from best-in-class direct-to-consumer businesses. I would even say they transcend direct-to-consumer e-commerce. They're more consumer brands based out in the UK and North America. And he did a very good job to whittling down, what were the instrumental pillars for their sustained growth over time. He spoke directly with the founders, and you have interview, just the interview notes on there, as well as his takeaways that validate his thoughts on the key just the key pillars to growth. He himself is a founder. He's a founder of a confectionery D2C brand called Pepper Smith's. It was a natural flavor, chewing gum brand of chewing gums in the UK that was widely distributed across grocery stores. He exited that after a few years of running it. Prior to that, he had worked for the cult favorite Innocent Drinks before they sold to Coca-Cola. So there's a lot of just knowledge, 2 decades long of knowledge of consumer, what it means to bring out a consumer brand on the one hand, and how that intersects with our world of direct to consumer in 2022. So super interesting. We covered a lot. We covered his background. We went into like the key threads, the key themes across all of these D2C businesses. And kind of like their structure. One thing he really said was a lot of them care about their customers. They're very customer centric, and they do it in their actions. They show they're customer centric in their actions, less so their words, more in their actions. Besides that, really interesting conversation I had with him. It was a longer one, but it was well worth it. So if you are looking to just get that foundational collective effort strategy towards growing an e-commerce business holistically and not in silos saying, oh, I'm going to do, I bought ads on TikTok or what have you. It's more a holistic way whereby the supply chain integrates with product development, and that integrates with marketing and customer service. If you get all of that together and you're looking to see how to synchronize all of those core business functions towards growth, you want to listen to this episode, you want to get the book. I would leave you now to listen to the episode, and I shall catch you on the other side. Thank you. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the 2X e-commerce podcast.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Real quick, quick request. Could you take a minute or two to just introduce, yourself? Um, you're the author of a book, but you have a very interesting background in fast moving consumer goods or CPG. Do you want to just give us a breakdown of where you're coming from? Cheers.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I'm in. I guess I am an author now. I've written this book, which we're going to get into, no doubt. But primarily, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a founder. Um, my journey started really in CPG, so it's a CPG and food and drink where I've had most experience, and it's all started in 2001 when I joined a brand new startup in in Shepherd's Bush in southwest London, who were making fruit juice. And I was asked to come along and can I help the founders with their operations at the time. And so I joined them as sort of as a fresh grad who had a real interest in startups and entrepreneurial businesses, but not knowing a lot about this business because no one had really heard of them. And that business turned out to be Innocent Drinks, the smoothie company. And so I was always just really grateful and fortuitous that I joined one of the best and most iconic startups really in the last 20 or 30 years. But it's important to know the reason I went along and joined the startup is because I always wanted to to have my own thing, to become a founder, and my plan was to be in Innocent for 2 to 3 years to see what a startup was all about because I hadn't worked in one before, and then apply those learnings and do my own thing. As it turned out, it was 8 years at Innocent because it was such an incredible business to be involved with. Such a huge growth, all sorts of projects, and some fantastic people I worked with. But it was always a matter of when, not if. I I went off to do my own thing. So me and another chap who I met at Innocent called Dan Shrimpton, in 2009, we founded Peppersmith, which was a sort of good for you confectionery company. And the reason we went into confectionery is because the insight was that the food and drink industry in the whole was changing rapidly, led by the likes of Innocent, where products were more natural, they were more healthy, they were more sustainable, and with some really great brands to tell the story, to explain to consumers why these products are so different to what had come before. And this was changing all across
Mhm.
food and drink, not only in fruit juice, but one category seemed to be left behind, and that was confectionery. And confectionery was still dominated by huge sort of multinational companies who've been doing the same thing for decades, if not centuries. And primarily it was sort of high
Mhm.
volume sugary crap made very cheaply, and they were very good at that.
Mhm.
But our belief was, if the rest of the food and drink industry was changing, consumer demands were changing around natural, sustainably healthy, and and better brands. Why wouldn't that be the case in
Mhm.
confectionery? So we launched Peppersmith. We started off with chewing gum, and we grew that business. So we made mints, chewing gum, other sugar-free products. It was available in all the mainstream retailers. So we're talking bricks and mortar. So Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, WH Smith, Boots all carried the product. And I was CEO of Peppersmith and grew the business over sort of an 8, 9 year period, and eventually exited in 2018. We sold the business to essentially one of our biggest customers. It was one of the biggest health and whole food customers who wanted to buy brands. It was the right time for me to make some changes to my own in my own life. So it was a good time to to sell the business. And I worked with the brand for a couple of years before I
Mhm.
sort of stepped away. And one of the big things I was going to do with the time after I moved away from sort of running the business as a CEO was write this book. And I can tell you about sort of the genesis of how I came to write a book about D2C.
Yeah, before we jump into the genesis of how you went about writing the book, it's just exciting to know that you first of all you were at Innocent drinks. I'd say they were the pioneers of in the consumer packaged goods space of how to rethink a boring just vertical or a boring line, and they just looking at the bottles at the time with the happy faces. It was just invigorating from a consumer standpoint, and you being part of it. I think you were the head of operations for over your tenure there, so that speaks volume in terms of the exposure in there. So amazing. Were you there at the point of their exit, or did you kind of did you leave prior
No,
to their exit to Coca-Cola?
I left just at the time when sort of Coca-Cola were sort of looking at the business. I mean, Coca-Cola took a minority investment before they eventually buying up the majority stake of Innocent, and I left just as at that very first point. But and it was hard for me to leave because Innocent was just such a great business to be involved with. However, as I said before, I had this desire to be a founder. So, I mean, I was lucky. I mean, I was on the startup team at Innocent, worked with the founders very closely, but I wasn't the founder. So it was a time for me to do something for myself, and that's where we started with Peppersmith.
Yeah, and that segued you to Peppersmith, which was like an all natural, mint confectionery with the chewing gum and the rest. So did you do DTC there first, or did you just say, what, this is a pick and go confectionery product. We need to get into grocery stores.
Yeah, so back in 2009, I mean D2C was it had started to happen, or so I would say sort of e-commerce was a thing, but D2C as a strategy was still it was very, very early on. So what we did, the strategy is what we knew is like if we're going to make a successful business, we're going to have to get into all the shops. So it's about resale distribution. So we sort of built the business and the strategy around that. However, from day one, we had a little web shop. So we were able to serve customers who wanted to put an order in. We cobbled together, we had a little website. We cobbled together some very basic, off-the-shelf, free PrestaShop at the time, with a WordPress website, and the big thing was we could hook that up to PayPal, and people could use PayPal and place orders. And the reason we did it is because we knew as a brand new company and a new brand without a huge marketing budget, it was going to take us a while, a long time to build up distribution. And what we didn't want to do is disappoint anyone. So we were lucky, we had a lot of PR early on, and what we didn't want to, if anyone had sort of seen or heard about us, we wanted to make sure they could get hold of the products. And I always imagined a sleepy little village in North Scotland which didn't have a supermarket for miles around, and someone reading about Peppersmith, and he's like, they want the product, right? But we're not Coca-Cola, so we're not in every store. So how do they do it? Well, they can jump on the internet, they can read about us, and if they they like the sound of it, they can get their credit card out and place an order. And that was the idea, and it worked so well, particularly when we had some good PR, and when we had a steady stream of internet orders every week. There was packing up orders and trip to the post office. That was a regular thing, normally on a Friday. But we had a couple of really good bits of PR, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't just like dozens of orders a week. It was hundreds, if not thousands. It's like, holy mackerel, this is a thing. So we sort of built up a bit of a presence on D2C. We were one of the first food and drink products on Amazon. So Amazon started to become quite an important customer for us. It was like, oh, internet's a thing.
So at what year did you start to? At what point in time? What year roughly was Amazon starting to play a noticeable role in the delivery of orders?
Yeah, so I mean, probably 2011, I think we first got onto Amazon. And then Amazon, as I guess our awareness grew, and again because we weren't in all the shops, Amazon was just a place that people were visiting. And so, people were buying the product, putting up reviews, and that became quite big. And this was before the days of like Amazon ads and stuff. It did, A+ pages, that didn't exist at the time. It was just products on the Amazon website. But over the years, we had to get better and better at, sort of understanding Amazon and what we need to do to stand out. And that was the same with D2C. But really, for me, the big inflection point on D2C was growing organically without us putting a huge lot of effort into it. And whereas as we grew, retail was just becoming harder and harder. I mean, all the stories you hear about the supermarkets and how hard they are to deal with, 100% true, and probably worse than you can imagine in terms of they're just very demanding, and they don't always they don't always do everything they can to accommodate a smaller supplier. So we were finding retail, we were getting successes. It wasn't a failure. We had some good listings, but in terms of sort of scaling up, it's like, wow, this is quite hard graft. And at the same time, D2C was growing without us trying very hard. So my thought was, why don't we invest more time in D2C, because it's growing and it seems to be a good way of doing things, and maybe divert some of the efforts from retail. And as we were growing our D2C channel, and we were quite successful, and by the time I sold the business, it was about 30% of all the sales were coming from D2C and Amazon. So which is pretty bananas when you think about it, because selling mints and chewing gum primarily, which are our main products, that's a very much grab and go product. That's the sort of product you want to pick up at the checkout. But we were selling cases of them online, and the reason we were able to do that is because we had some active health benefits within the product, and it meant if you wanted to enjoy those health benefits, you should have it all the time. And D2C was a very convenient way of getting products to our customers, so they had it all the time. So we were putting more effort into D2C, but it just occurred to me there was so much to think about in terms of D2C. There was pricing, there was distribution, there was marketing, there was tech, all of the things that we all think about. And I know all the sort of listeners and people who watch this podcast, they think about it on on a daily basis. For us, it was all new, and it was also incremental. It was on top of all the things we had to do in the retail space. So it's like, my observation was like, wow, there's lots to think about to get this right. So let's figure out how to do it. And one of the first things I did is I went around asking my founder peer group, so primarily in food and drink, but some other CPG products as well. And I sort of asking different brand owners, what are you doing with your D2C strategy? What's working for you and what's not? And the answer was pretty much uniform, which was, what, we're giving it a go. It seems like a really good channel, but we're really learning on the job. So there were a few people who were focused on this, like Graze.com, who were down the road from us, who I knew quite well. They were all over D2C, but for the rest of us, it was incremental, and we were coming at it from a place where there was very little knowledge, and we were sort of just learning as we went. And what it always frustrated me as we were building our D2C channels, that there wasn't more best practice out there. And I'm the sort of person that I want to learn quickly, and one of the best ways to learn quickly is you read blog posts, you listen to podcasts, and you also read books. And my observation and frustration in the last 5 or 10 years, there is not the book out there, or not many, that explains, as a brand owner, this is how you really do a good job on D2C. So rolling forward sort of 4 or 5 years, eventually, sort of the time was come to exit out of Peppersmith. It occurred to me that no one had still written this book, and I was still so passionate about D2C and the opportunity. And I knew, I consult and mentor and advise and all sorts of stuff now with lots of brands, and all of them were still thinking about D2C, but yet the sort of the best practice was still hard to find. So I took it upon myself to spend the best part of 2 years interviewing the founders of the best D2C brands that I could find, so I could ask them all the questions that either that I didn't know the answer to or I wasn't sure about. Asking them about about product development and product market fit and scaling and operations and customer service, and sort of unit economics and all all the things that everyone does when we're thinking about. But I want to find out from those businesses who've really made this work, what have they done to make
Mm-hmm.
this D2C a success, knowing what I know. But the one thing I did know, it was just really hard. I was like, but there are brands out there who've cracked this. So what are they doing
Mm-hmm.
that maybe we're not, or other brands are not? So it was about those founders and those businesses that really have worked this out. Trying to just extract from them, their knowledge, their strategies, their wisdom, and then put it all in a book. It's the book that I wanted 5 years ago, and no one had written it. And I knew if it was going
Mm.
to be helpful to me, it would certainly be helpful to lots of other people. So that's why I've written this book that's just been released.
No, super interesting. I actually have a copy of the book. I got it a few days ago. I started reading it. It features about 15 case studies from best in class, consumer package D2C brands. One of which is Grace.com, which you said they're not too far from you. Huel, huge, fast growth. Snag, I don't really know Snag. I know Bloom and Wild. Cornerstone. There's a lot. Who gives a crap? Tribe. Lick Paints in the UK, Ugly Drinks there in the US, All Plants, Casper, and Hewitt's Denim. So really, actually, Hewitt Denim is not C2 is not CPG brand. It's more apparel, but yeah, that stands out. So really interesting. Is there an on? I know you're very strategy, top level. Growth, type of, oriented in the way you're thinking because you're a founder, right? But is there any recurring theme you noticed across all 15 case studies you think every founder should have when thinking about undergoing this journey, or if you're already in this journey, what to really have in place as a foundational cornerstone to growth?
Yeah, so the the thing that I really noticed as I was going through all these interviews, I mean, I met some fantastic people. These founders are, I mean, they got some really varied, incredible backgrounds. They had done some really interesting things before they'd set up their own businesses, and yeah, it was great to sort of understand who they were. But one of the huge themes that came out of those conversations were all the founders were problem solvers, and they wanted to help and serve people. In my observation, in my world, I think there's two types of entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs. There's those entrepreneurs who sort of see a gap in the market. It's like, oh, there's more there's more demand than supply in a particular area. I think I can, exploit that opportunity, and I can make some money from it. I think that's one type of entrepreneurs, and that's not to be dismissed because, yeah, sort of there's some hugely successful individuals and businesses out there following that strategy. But there's the second type, and I think this applies to pretty much every founder that I met in the Direct-To-Consumer Playbook, is that they want to solve problems and they want to help customers, and they do it in a customer centric way. Examples of that, they were, I mean, Bloom and Wild, a really fascinating business who do sell flowers, and the reason Aaron set up Bloom and Wild is because he just sort of noticed what a frustrating experience that sending flowers were, or trying to give someone a bunch of flowers. And you think about buying someone to flowers, it should be a really joyful thing, right? But it wasn't. It was
Mm-hmm.
poor quality products. It was sort of high price, really inconvenient. It just wasn't a great experience. And he figured out, so this was something that he wanted to do better. And then he did all the things that are working out right. Okay, so how does the supply chain work? How does sort of customer service work? What do people really want? And he set up Bloom and Wild, and his big innovation was sending flowers through people's letterboxes, which sort of 5, 6, 7 years on, that feels, oh, of course that's a thing. It wasn't back then. It was just a way of doing things bigger. And Snag is, said a brand that you hadn't heard of. So Snag is a it's a women's primarily it's a tights company. They sell other products as well now, but when I interviewed Bree, the founder, who's fantastic, a couple of years ago, they were focused on tights, and the reason they went into tights is because Bree had an experience walking up the high street where her tights fell down, and then she told had that conversation in the pub with her mates. She's like, I've had this really embarrassing experience. My tights fell down. Why are tights so rubbish? Does anyone else have problems with tights? And all her mates said, yeah, whatever size or shape or age they were, it's like, yeah, we can't get good tights. And she's like, I can solve this problem. So she went out and set up Snag. Heights is another good example. So Heights was set up by Joel and Dan, who had a business before, and they had, the business didn't go that well, and they had quite a tough time, and they were having some problems around mental health, and they were struggling. And it was through those experiences, in terms of looking after their own health, they discovered that there was opportunities in supplements, and they call it brain care, which is how to look after yourself a bit better. And they took that learning, that individual pain and learning, and applied it to a wider market. And again, the whole thing is about not selling as many bottles or pills as possible. It's about helping as many people as possible. So this was a really big thing in terms of how can we best help our customers. And also, I would say, as a founder and a strategist, one of the other things that all these brands do really well is they cover all the bases. They do product development, they do marketing, they do finance, they do supply chain, they do data analysis, they do customer service. They have to do all of these things, because if you don't execute on these things well, you're going to suffer. And particularly in the DTC space now, it's so competitive. You've got to do everything well to get it right. But it goes back. These businesses have a mission, a purpose. They want to serve. And also, another example that comes out of that is the amount of incremental product development. They want to get better every day. Data is a big part of that. But taking products and making it a little bit better each time they make it, so they can serve their customers better, is a huge part of what they do.
Yeah. So from what I took from everything, every one of them is customer obsessed, and that sort of rains down into their entire organization. So because they're so customer obsessed, they want to listen to customers. They want to get a pulse on how customers feel about the experience they're delivering, and then they take those insights to feed into their into product development and research, and then they amplify that message into their marketing, and it's like a rinse and repeat. Is that?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Tribe, who make sports bars and nutrition, have they have what they call a flywheel, where they run events that creates a community of customers, and they sell their products to their customers. But really, what powers that whole business is that they have a foundation which is all about eradicating modern day slavery. So with the foundation, with the community, with the events and the products, it just feeds. So yeah, I mean, they call it flywheel. You could call it rinse and repeat. It's a bit of a cruder way, but saying it, but it's the same thing. So yes, there is all of those things are happening.
Yeah, and I think you have you have the foundations, and then that every single one of these companies has a unique way of doing things and their moats, and so it is so important to read through the case studies, so you have a wide breadth of the individual rotors, because it's all nuanced, based on their time to market, their products, a lot of things, right, in the markets. And then you just get a broad overview and see what applies to you, or what you could take from each of them. Is that how to approach the book?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good way to say it. I mean, one of the reasons, I mean, in the book there's actually 16 case studies. There's 15 chapters of case
16.
studies, and the reason there's 16, there's one chapter um, which has two brands in it, and the reason that chapter has two brands in it is because it's all about launching in 2021. That's the chapter with Lick and Clearing,
Okay.
who are a US
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
pain relief company.
Yeah.
So
And yeah.
uh, sorry, I've lost the thread. Where do we get to?
Oh no, we're talking about, I was talking about the foundational principles and how nuanced, each of the each of the stories could be, and the reason why, one should sort of read and pick and choose, along with obviously the foundational, stuff you just alluded to.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry. So the point I was going to make is the reason I wrote 16 case studies, and not one or
Hmm.
two, or even just focused on my own experience, is because yeah, every business has got
Hmm.
a different story. They've got different areas of expertise. But what I also wanted to show is if I can
Hmm.
pull out the commonalities between all these businesses, there's a good chance that those lessons will apply to any successful D2C business. I wanted to make sure I had a decent sample size,
Yeah.
not just one and two. So I ended up with 16 plus my experience at Peppersmith.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Very, very, very interesting. Um, just going back to, you mentioned Lick, and I was almost a customer of Lick. I love that the D2C, that their ads on my Instagram, they used people like me in their ads, from an age demographic, and it just seemed fresh, a new way to rethink, painting. Although I eventually ended up with one of the other brands, but here, looking at Lick, they have a crunch base, right? They have two founders who've realized that, okay, for us to build this, we're changing an industry, and for us to build this, this new brand, this category, this challenger brand, essentially, we're going to need finance. So in their crunch base, they do have investors. Um, how in all of these, in all 16 case studies, how important was taking, just showing proof of concept, going to raise, and obviously implementing growth strategy? I'm thinking, do you need to raise in D2C to do it well? Obviously, along with those strategies, not to diminish the strategies, not about money, but for you to build a D2C brand, what camp are you? Team bootstrap or team raise and try and scale quick?
I mean, you can do it both, and there is examples in the book of both. I mean, I would say prior, um, most of the brands in the book have raised, I guess, significant amounts of money. And one of the interesting things about talking to Lick and Clearing in the same chapter is they had both raised multiple millions at sort of seed level, and then sort of went in further of a Series A of some significant rounds. And I guess the reason they felt they had to do that is because we are just living in a world where it's just so much more competitive. I mean, D2C has it's been normalized, especially during the pandemic. So most people would consider D2C as a valid place to go and do their shopping, to buy their products. And and also, for people who really like D2C, there's so many brands out there who are competing for clicks and orders. So the reason that these two particular businesses felt that it was the right thing to sort of invest in their business, in their offer, in their capabilities, and in their marketing is because they knew, the world had moved on. Cheap digital ads just don't exist anymore. They know that if they're going to get any serious traction, they have to appeal to a lot of customers and they have to draw customers to them. The reason Lick do such a great job on Instagram, and you remember it's Instagram, it's not so much about Instagram ads, it's about what they do, what they post, is because they want to put great content out there that gets people to engage in the brand. I mean, Lick have this challenge where if they just sell paint, I mean, people don't buy paint every week. I mean, you don't get like a subscription model of paint, so they need to keep their customer base engaged with the brand, and the way they do that is to be, put lots of helpful and inspiring pictures about, this is a great look for a room. You could have that, even if it doesn't involve a repaint, it's just like moving things around, and they also have lots of handy guides about decorating and wallpapering, painting, all sorts of things. So they know they have to be helpful. And an even a better example of this is Hyatt Denim. We mentioned before. So Hyatt Denim make really high quality jeans out in West Wales in a place called Cardigan. And they're fantastic products. And the backstory behind why Hyatt Denim do what they do is fascinating. But you can read about that in the book. But the point I'm going to make today with Hyatt Denim is that the vast majority of their marketing, which is not about digital ads, it's about really high quality newsletters, it's about yearbooks, it's about events, and pretty much all of that content doesn't really talk about jeans or their brand. It talks about other things that it knows is going to inspire and engage their customer base, and by doing that, they keep that customer base sort of connected to their brand and what it means, especially jeans. Most people don't buy jeans on a particular frequent basis as well. So, but you can interact with that brand and then still only buy products from them once a year. And that's fantastic because they know if they can serve great relevant content to you that's going to be interesting and inspiring, that when you do get around, I need a new pair of jeans, they're going to be the first place that you come to.
Top of mind. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that strategy is really community centered, if anything else, because they're creating all this content to attract a certain persona, good, obviously a really big segment, and then they're top of mind. Interesting, super interesting. So earlier on in our conversation, you were decrying retail, retail distribution, as to how difficult stores are, particularly serving smaller brands, which typically would meet the DTC profile. Um, what? How did you, Pepper Smith? How did you solve that problem? You were, retail first. What was your retail team, like? How did you sort of get into retail at the time?
Yeah, but I mean, retail, that's I guess that's all we knew. And coming out of Innocent, we knew retail. So I guess we were retail. We had a lot of retail expertise, and the strategy to start was, let's get into a few high end sort of delis and coffee shops and health food shops, and then if we can make that successful, that's a bit like a market test, right? Are people going to buy this product? And if the answer is yes, we can prove sales. We can get into some of the the bigger independents. We can start getting some change, like Whole Foods Market. They were one of our first customers, and then if you can prove it works from there, you can get to Holland and Barrett. Then you can get to Waitrose, and you sort of just build and build and build on that. But it takes a long time. And one of the things I learned and came to love about D2C is you can do that testing and brand building so much more efficiently and quickly. I guess you can do it on a bigger scale as well. When we were going around with our rucksacks full of products in London trying to find the best new deli or the best new coffee shop, we were having to visit everyone by foot. Whereas on the internet, anyone can find you as long as you've got a product that stands out. So we love the internet, but I think interviewing Anthony Fletcher, who was the CEO at Gray's, he put this best in terms of start D2C, build your brand, build your products, iterate, learn how to serve your customers, learn what your customers really like. And then you can think about going sort of multi-channel. And a lot of the brands in the book, they're not, they do D2C, and they started D2C, but there's many examples of multi-channel and even omni-channel out there where bricks and mortar comes into play. And what Anthony told me, and I think he's absolutely right, is look, if you can get things right in using your D2C channel, then you can apply it to retail. You've got a much better chance of success, because the retailers, they're pretty unforgiving. If you can't, if you mess up on deliveries, maybe you haven't got enough products available, if you get your pricing wrong, if you actually put products on shelf that people are not going to buy, you're not going to be in that customer for very long. And the other hard thing about retail is if you do get it wrong, it can take you, years to get back into those stores. I mean, you've lost your opportunity. So, using D2C as a way to sort of build up awareness, to get your products right, to build up a community, is a fantastic way. And what Graze also managed to do is took a D2C mentality into retail, and for Graze that meant rapid iteration. They were the masters at sort of looking at customer data and customer feedback and working out what products were popular, what weren't, what needed to be improved upon. And they've been doing that for years. And then they went into retail and they did the same. And they absolutely blew the buyers' minds when they said, after 4 weeks, we want to change our products. We've got 12 products in your store. We think we can change 6 of them. And here's the data, and here's the replacements with data to back that up. Because those cycles traditionally took a year, 2 years to work out if a product or a brand was going to be successful, and then all of a sudden Grace could do it in not even months, they could do it in weeks. I mean, Ugly were another great example of this. So Hugh from Ugly, he did a lot of his sort of new products launch on D2C, make it D2C first, make it exciting, and then get feedback on those products. And then if they're successful, they can go into bricks and mortar retail. And what he said to me is like, he can learn more in a week from the data and the conversations he has with customers via his D2C channel than he could in a year on a retailer shelf. It's just such an abundance of data, because you remember, we're talking directly to the end consumer. Retailers are always just that they're that step in the middle. Most brands, CPG brands, consider the retailers to be their customers. They are their customers, I guess, because they pay the bills. But really, it's about the end consumer. If the end consumer doesn't, is not enjoying your product, there's, it's not really about what your customers think. It's about the consumer.
Yeah, they're definitely gatekeepers to accessing the end user, the consumer. And then with D2C, you're cutting that intermediary, fairly quickly. And I love what you talked about in regards to, it's all about the data, really. And I like the fact that you're taking data from the site, but you're also getting data from customers by talking to them. Do you want to just speak a little bit about how to talk to customers, how to get more data, how to get more qualitative data from customers, probably through surveys and
I mean, I guess
and groups and interest groups?
Yes, sorry. I mean, I get passionate about data because it's just it's just one of the key things that D2C brands, the advantage they have over anyone who sells via wholesalers and retail. It's just that abundance of data. When we started out, we were amazed. It's like no, we started getting orders from customers. And actually, there were a few, sort of celebrities and famous customers in there as well. I was like, wow, we've got this, we've got their email, we've got their address. Not that we did anything crazy with that, but it was just like, oh, all of a sudden we know who's consuming the products. And I think the data comes in 2 ways. There's sort of that, sort of macro level data. It's like how many people have said this is a 5-star product, how many people are buying it, how many people were returning, coming back again. You can just get a sense for trends. But where it gets really powerful as well is when you have direct conversations with those consumers. And this often happens. There's the surveys, as you mentioned, but there's also there's opportunities when customers sort of get in touch with you either via email or phone you up. Normally it's like, ooh, I put an order in for a delivery, it's not arrived, can you tell me if it's there? It's like, and as good customer service, you solve that problem as quickly as you can for them. But while you are solving that problem, it's your opportunity to interact with that customer. How did you find out about us? What do you like? What can we do more? What do you think of our packaging? All of the things that you can discover. So it is really, it's all the it's the big data stuff, but also there's nothing more important than those personal reactions. And an example of this in the book as well is a business that has got it very right now, but got it very wrong at the start, and that is Tails.com, who make sort of lots of personalized dog food. If personalized dog food can be a thing, they make loads of different types of dog food depending on the age, the size, the breed, the behaviors of a dog. And what happened with them when they started out, and this was in think it was 2014, they came from a background of D2C. It's got to just be about very quick transactions, subscription model, quick transaction, go again. And what that meant is that they didn't have a a customer service telephone number. It was hard to find an email. It was hard to get in touch with anyone. They didn't have an address of their business on their website. And what it meant is that those customers are theirs. As a new brand, they were forming no relationships. Those customers needed things that from the brand, and maybe they were trying to get in touch with them. But also because there was no interaction, it meant the brand couldn't understand what that was most important to their customers. And this happened very early on in their business, and they got to a point after sort of 3, 4, 6 months where it's like, ooh, maybe this is not working. Our CPAs are really high. Our LTV, our retention values are low. I don't think we've maybe got this right. This business looks like it might not be viable. They had a huge factory, they had loads of stuff, but the data was telling them that things needed to be corrected, and if they weren't corrected quite quickly, they were going to be in trouble. And so the correction happened by opening up the business to their customer base, putting on, have more customer service people, putting on a telephone number, making sure it was easy to write an email and get a quick response. And what they found quickly out of that is that, sometimes their customers just didn't feel loved. Dogs are, pets are really emotive. We love our pets. And what customers were feeling is, here's a brand who don't really care. So therefore, they don't care about their pets. So they're not the brand for us. And it was only when they, sort of built up their interaction, they could show their customers they did care, because they absolutely did. They just weren't talking to their customers in the right way, and they were also able to fix some sort of teething problems they had around their algorithms, and how their frequency and what sort of products and stuff, stuff that I guess every brand goes through, but they were only able to correct that when they have proper conversations with their customer base. So data is this huge informational advantage that all brands have with D2C, but I always go back to the fact you can just talk to your customers, and nothing can be better than that.
Super interesting, Stephen. One question as we round this conversation up is team. We talked about the fact that I know you mentioned this is really important in terms of all the case studies in your book. Are vertically integrated. They think about products, are very customer centric, and they're very deliberate with their marketing and their branding, essentially, and they're all sort of optimized to build community and create content that's relevant to the target market. But looking internally at the businesses themselves, would you say that how would you sort of describe their teams? How are the teams structured? And I know their teams would evolve over time, based on really based on the maturity of the business. But do you want to just break down a bit on team size?
Yeah.
And the relevant disciplines you need in running these a substantial D2C business?
Yeah, I mean the big thing that all these businesses tend to have, I mean some have big teams, some have small teams, some employ hundreds of people, some employ sort of less than 10, and but yeah, it's really important to cover all the bases. I mean, and there's this you mentioned vertical integration. I mean, vertical integration means that you do everything right, and I think one of the big decisions that these founders have to make or have made is about what do they outsource and what do they keep in house. And and the answer is, especially if you want to be vertically integrated, you have to have as much as possible in house. And the reason that is important is because they're learning how to serve their customers best, and you can't do that if you're allowing you've got elements of your business that are really important elements of your business that are served by other people. Great example is customer service. I don't think any of these brands that I interviewed outsource their customer service. And the reason they don't do that is because, again, they want to make sure they got these authentic conversations and relationships with their customers. So that's a really important part of it. And then Bloom and Wild had a really good example around tech. So when they started, they outsourced all their tech. I forget which country they were building their platform out of, but they just found it was just so hard and complicated to build that platform quickly and successfully, thinking about sort of UX and sort of just that the journeys that customers have to have when they interact with those brands, by doing it with third parties. They brought it back in house, and they've become they were Aaron would admitted this to me. He was quite green when it came to tech when he started, but now Bloom and Wild, they have their own tech blog on their website. They've become technology leaders and experts because they brought it back into house. They brought it back in house, and the reason they've done that is because it's the best way to serve their customers. And what they've also done, and going back to Bloom and Wild, they have now this thing, you probably would have seen it, where you have the ability to opt out of certain emails. For example, sort of Mother's Day and Father's Day. There's a good proportion of their customers who don't appreciate the fact that they get an email about Mother's Day. So they don't actually, they want to interact with the brand, but they don't want to see that particular message. So they set up a program where customers could opt out of certain campaigns. And this was a huge undertaking in terms of the tech, and if you want to manage sort of your marketing list and your customer database, this is a difficult thing to do, but they could do it because they had the technology in house, but also the desire. They wanted to do this, and the customers really, really appreciated it as well. And that turned out to be such a good idea. It's been adopted by sort of DTC brands across the world. You'll see lots of different examples of that now. But when Bloom and Wild first started doing it a few years ago, it was a new thing and a big endeavor, but they could do it because they had in-house teams who were up for it.
Interesting. Very, very interesting, Mike. We could go on and on and on. For those people who found these conversations interesting, that it's all expanded in your book. The name of the book is called The Direct-To-Consumer Playbook. It's available on Amazon and several other book websites published by Corgan Page. Do you run a blog yourself? Are you active online? Where can people sort of follow you if they really want to follow your work and your words?
Yeah, no, and I'd encourage that. Please do come and find me out and ask me questions about sort of D2C, sort of founded businesses, and particularly, I love to hear what people think about the book. And you can find me. I am quite active on LinkedIn, so just search Mike J. Stevens on LinkedIn, or Mike Peppersmith. You'll find me, and also on Twitter. My handle is Open Mike Stevens, and one of the best places you can find what I think and what I'm up to is on my website, and that is my consultancy website that I actually run with my wife, who's a sustainability expert, and that's www.Stevens.Earth. you will find lots of information on there about what I do, how I help businesses. But you also there's a blog there as well, so you can read about some of the case studies if you want to get a flavour of what's in the book. But please, get in touch. I love to talk to people about all of this stuff.
I appreciate your time, Mike. It was a pleasure, as I said earlier, and I was really looking forward to this conversation. You didn't disappoint.
Great. Well, thanks. It's been fun being on, so thanks very much.